Hello Internet, this is Sophia. My special guest today is Archbishop Lazar Puhalo of New Ostrog, a jurisdiction within the Orthodox Church of America. Welcome to my show.
Needless to present to everybody.
So, tell us a little bit about New Ostrog and the history of your community there.
Well, it's a monastery, of course, and it's been called New Ostrog since we opened it. The official name is actually All Saints of North America, but it's always been called New Ostrog because it's against the cliff face and reminds people of Ostrog. And I was at Old Ostrog in Chernigov, in Montenegro before, so officially we call it New Ostrog. But, I'm 80 years old, so I'm retired Archbishop. I was former Archbishop of Ottawa, and now I'm the head of this community of New Ostrog.
So how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected you and your community?
Well, we're the same as everyone else. We've been under sort of self-isolation. The only thing we have, the Narcotics Anonymous group that meets outdoors around the fire. Now, because we can't have them indoors because they're too close to each other, but the community itself, the congregation, we usually have between 100 and 150 people on Sundays coming to the monastery, but we haven't been able to allow them to come during this COVID-19. The provincial government has a kind of a lockdown of that, plus the jurisdiction itself has given us directives. So we've, and being 80 years old, I'm a 4-time stroke survivor and a 3-time cancer survivor, so I likely have some compromised medical situation. So I've been especially careful, and everybody's sort of shepherding me to be especially careful. So I've been holed up in my own place most of the time. Our lockdown
we wish you the
was
best of
never
health. We wish
quite
you
as serious as it was in the States. But we've been under kind of lockdown in British Columbia.
But we wish you the best of health.
Well, so far I've got that.
Now, one thing I'd like to know, in your tradition, what is the Christian teaching regarding vaccination?
Well, we don't have a teaching on it. I mean, get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated, it's your call. If for the individual. I mean, it's the sort of thing, as far as we're concerned, you have freedom of choice, make your choice. But I wouldn't want to see a government impose on anybody, because that's when government starts imposing things, you're in trouble. You should have free choice about it. Personally, I get vaccinated. Well, I haven't had the flu for about 17 years, ever since I started getting vaccinated. I never had flu once. And of course, in the 40s, when we had measles, we were at a military base, and we had measles in our house. 2 of the kids in the community died from measles because we didn't have vaccines. We didn't have vaccines. And I remember when my younger half-sister had polio, and she was in an iron lung. So a whole row of kids with just their heads sticking out of the iron lung. And it was quite a dreadful thing. In fact, they were always crippled in one leg or the other. Polio vaccines, of course, saved multitudes from that. But it has to be a matter of free choice. You can't impose things like that. I mean, that's my objection, is the imposition. If people choose to be vaccinated, fine. If they choose not to be vaccinated, fine, that's their choice.
And what about the danger to the public health if somebody who does not get vaccinated Well,
we've had
someone
that
else.
situation because the only time we had a measles outbreak out here was in a religious school where fundamentalist religious school, and they didn't allow vaccinations. Consequently, the measles spread throughout that and then began to spread to the general community. And actually, we did have, I think, 3 deaths from measles. People forget, measles is not just a childhood disease. You can die from it. And so it's just like mumps, or it's a childhood disease. No, it's a serious disease. It can cause serious effects. So personally, I believe in vaccines. I'm all for vaccines, but I'm not in favor of imposing them. I'm all for vaccines. And I think, you get a lot of right-wing conspiracy theories about these things. On the other hand, you get enough left-wing conspiracy theories also. But I think it's better to trust the experts, to trust the medical experts. So, my first studies were in physics, so I have a scientific bent of mind. And vaccines work. I'm grateful that I had vaccines in my younger days. And I'm grateful I got vaccinated for shingles in my old age, because shingles is also a nasty disease. And I haven't had it. Some of my contemporaries have. But I got vaccinated early. I've also been vaccinated against viral pneumonia. So I'm all for vaccines. Because you can't harm the greater public without having vaccines. One kid with measles can infect 100, and they can spread it to more. And children die of measles every year someplace in the world. So it's a deadly disease.
And does the church have any teaching regarding shelter-in-place orders?
No, you wouldn't have a teaching for this, not a theological matter. I'm sheltered in place because I have a history of medical problems, and so I was happy to do it. Except yesterday, I did quite a lot of shopping, and it's a lot of our stores are open. I believe in the States they're not, but a lot of our stores are open. I've done my own shopping as much as I can. Early on in the epidemic, people brought me food and they left it outside my door, and I bought it. But I put a mask on and wore gloves when I first started going shopping. Yesterday, I must admit I did not. So if I get COVID-19, I get it. So, at my age, you're not too worried about whether you die or not.
Well, I still hope you've got a few years in you.
Well, I expect so. My doctor keeps giving me a clean bill of health, and I've had 2 PET scans in the last year, antimatter scans, and they find absolutely nothing, so I seem to be clean.
Anyways, you're obviously aware of many religious groups who embrace conspiracy theories, and as far as denominations go, one thing that you might find is close to home is that the Russian Orthodox Church in Moldova recently, for example, announced that
yes.
There hasn't yet been a vaccine developed yet, but they're in advance mentioning that the potential use of a vaccine was an anti-Christian plot, and that Microsoft would use it to microchip people in order to control them through 5G cell phone towers. What?
Oh, well, we went through this at one of my debates. I won't mention who my adversary has been in the 5 major debates I've had, but one of them was that barcodes were the mark of the beast. And it was rather awkward because the Moscow Patriarchate bookstore has barcoded candles and barcoded books and barcoded paraphernalia for sale. So the Moscow Patriarch had a big struggle with people who were followers of this certain person, and they had to force a couple of bishops to retire because they got with this barcode mania. And it reminded me of, perhaps you don't remember, when fundamentalists started the propaganda that Procter & Gamble had the mark of the beast on its logo. So you should boycott everything made by Procter & Gamble because it was obviously supporting Antichrist. And it's a big deal in the 80s. But I've heard so many of these things that it's rather ludicrous to go around with this sort of idea. Because, of course, Bill Gates wants to implant us all with microchips. I don't doubt that, people will end up implanted with microchips, so you can go through the supermarket without even stopping at the checkout counter. You can read your information and read everything that's microchipped or coded on the whatever you bought. But I realize that people will sacrifice freedom for convenience. I mean, they'll certainly sacrifice it for an illusion of security, but I've seen now that people will sacrifice their liberties for convenience. There are two ways to control people in a society. The Romans found out that the more entertainment you gave them, the more licentiously you let them live their daily lives, the more easier it was to control them. And that probably works better than terror or fear. You can find all kinds of control mechanisms when you allow yourself to slide into an autocracy of some kind, an authoritarian regime. And that does include, fascism, communism, and theocracy. They're the worst. Theocracy is right up there with communism.
Yes, some people would argue that they actually are kind of the same, that the communism that existed in places like Russia was, in a sense, kind of theocracy, only, the worship of Marx and Lenin.
Well, it was a philosophical religion. I mean, it was religion. Of course, it had doctrines and dogmas, so it was religion. So that's a problem with religion. I don't like, you should have faith and not religion, because religion always wants to impose itself on other people. And they'll do it by force if possible. We saw that throughout history, and we see it in Iran today. And Christianity would be no different than Shia Islam if it had political power. So, we have to protect ourselves from, we have civil laws that protect us from religion, because we can't burn witches anymore, we can't burn heretics anymore, we can't persecute other religious groups anymore. So we lost a lot of religious freedoms by the rise of democracy. One of the religious freedoms we had was that we could burn heretics as stake, and we could drown witches or burn them as stake, and we could persecute the neighbors if they were of the wrong religion. The neighbors mowing the lawn, I should really kill them because they're breaking the Sabbath.
Of course, how would that affect the religious liberties of those accused of being witches or perceived as heretics?
Right up until the 1600s, late 1600s, they were still burning witches in Britain. And it was only when we developed civil law to protect us from the excesses of religion. And that might be shocking to some people, but a little cursory look at history will tell us that. I see Americans, some Americans, some religious groups will tell us, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were written by God, inspired by God. They're actually just Enlightenment era masterpieces, and they are masterpieces, but they're from the Enlightenment era. Most of the people involved in writing them were secular theists at best, and most of them were secular humanists. Really inspired by John Locke, Immanuel Kant, Voltaire, probably Rousseau, and Thomas Jefferson quotes the founder of the Enlightenment movement with high praise. And all of this is Enlightenment era stuff. And by that time, even in Britain, you were protected by the law from the excesses of religion. So actually, faith is fine. We should have faith, complete faith. But when we think we have to, but religion always wants to persecute somebody and enforce against people. You know that in America, a lot of the not just evangelicals or Orthodox priests who preach politics from the surveillance of the gospel, and they really they're there. They consider it part of their religious rights to be able to persecute other people. And when you try to take away the right to persecute other people, it's being war against religion, being deprived of our rights. Well, you should be deprived of some of them.
Yes, so basically, you're saying that their idea of religious liberty, because it includes the right to impose their religious beliefs on the law, they feel that they are being persecuted when they are not allowed to do
persecuted that. When one of their doctrines is unconstitutional, they would try to impose it. And that's logical. Well, it should be so. The thing is that if we have faith in Christ, then okay, leave us alone and let us worship. But we don't want to bother anybody else. But that's not what happens. Because religion easily collapses into an ideology, and it's the ideology is usually not connected with any real dogmas. It's connected with your social point of view that you think is formed by your religion, and sometimes by your misreading of the scripture. And religion is very easily becomes an ideology, and it becomes political ideology. And that's when it becomes dangerous. So, and that has nothing to do with our faith. Our faith isn't an ideology. Our faith is an acceptance of Jesus Christ, and people even they look at Christ through the words Paul, or what they think Paul said, but they should read Paul through the lens of Jesus Christ. It should be the other way around. And we get these ideologies that set in, and very often the ideologies are formed by people who are supremely ignorant, or for whom ignorance is the doctrine of the faith. And it's almost always the ignorant who form these things, if not real believers who have genuine faith and are trying to struggle to save their souls and things like that. It's got to impose this on everybody. And one of the worst things is this holy nation delusion, that we're a holy nation, so we've got to clean up everything that we don't think is holy. So we've got to persecute everybody who doesn't believe like we do. That's where religious ideology can take you, and it's extremely dangerous.
And I mentioned earlier the thing about many religious groups embracing various conspiracy theories. Do you have any suspicions about why would you think are the reasons why some religious groups embrace conspiracy theories?
Well, for one thing, they a lot of them are apocalyptic. They're always about the last days, the last days, the last days, trying to read prophecy. And actually, when they read, say, the book of Daniel or something, they come out with conspiracy theories based on what they read in there, because of the way they read them, and because they give themselves too much importance. They're so self-important that they can. Daniel wasn't writing about the last days. He was writing about the situation in his own time, ending with the Roman Empire. And the people, I hear them quoting from Prophet Daniel, in the last days, Satan's going to come up with horns and things like that. So wait a minute. Daniel was prophesying about his own time and what followed his time, and actually writing some of it after the fact. But they come up with all kinds of stories, and then they read the book of Revelation and their imagination runs away with it. And everybody's conspiring to bring about the reign of Antichrist. Everybody's conspiring to make our society ungodly. Everybody's trying to imitate the Nicolaitans, they were heresy of the first century, where the Gnostics believed that there was a big separation between soul and body, and the body was necessarily evil or negative. So they wanted to wear the body out either through extreme asceticism or through licentious living. And the Nicolaitans were in favor of the licentious living. We decided it was more fun. But people come up with these theories. I rather suspect that a lot of those ideas come from somebody who's mentally ill. But schizophrenic people or psychotic people can be very convincing. When they're floored, they're very spiritual and very convincing. Well, I know that because for years we took in street people here, and good many of them are schizophrenic or bipolar. And so they can send their soul outside the body and explore the pyramids and all kinds of things. When they're speaking spiritually in a floored state, they're very spiritual and often very profound and very convincing. And I suspect that a lot of this stuff starts with somebody who's a bit psychotic, and then it gets carried by other people who are stampeded by it. And I'd say that from kind of experience of people we've had to deal with over the last 50 years. And I've seen this so many times that, and really I think a lot of these more extreme ideas are the product of mentally ill people. There was a reason why epilepsy was called the divine illness by Hippocrates, and especially Hippocrates and others, because epileptics have visions all the time. Every time there's a seizure, there's some kind of vision. And people will take these things seriously. So that's something we really have to be careful of, and I think stick to the faith and forget about religious ideologies and religious extremism and trying to take over the country by religion, because if you want that, move to Iran, see how you like it. Yeah. That's my view on it. That these extremes come from people who are mentally unstable, and they're very convincing. People just pick up on them because people are generally very ignorant about these matters. Anybody who thinks Daniel's talking about the last days of the history of the earth is just so far off base that you can't take anything else they say seriously either.
Speaking of prophecies, there's one prophecy that I've heard a lot of called the prophecy of Saint Nilus.
Well, Neil in Greek. In Greek it's Neil. But St. Neil of the Holy Mountain. But it's a posthumous prophecy. It isn't a prophecy he gave while he was alive. It's a prophecy he gave after he was dead, which rouses a little bit of suspicion.
Yes, so I've looked up about it, and supposedly it was first published in the 19th century.
Oh, when did Neil die?
I don't know when.
About a century, 2 centuries before that, but I think it was 1500s actually. So this is a little bit suspicious. It's. I could publish the posthumous prophecies of Metropolitan Anthony Beach, one of my great heroes, and I have dreamed about him once in a while because I wrote a biography of him and translated a lot of his theological works into English. So sometimes I even have dreamed about him, and so I could publish posthumous prophecies. See, he prophesied that people would soon everybody would send me $1,000 a month, and I would be very rich, and I'd have a private airplane, and, we've got to fulfill these prophecies. That the second coming can't take place until there's a new Constantine in Constantinople. But it also can't take place until there's a new Tsar Vladimir in Russia. And it also can't take place until there's a new King Stephen in Hungary. So I guess, they've all got to coordinate this so Christ can return. But these are all posthumous prophecies that somebody had in a dream. Now, the thing is that I through spiritual literature, but also through some of the political debates we've had, or religious debates, people will take seriously the pious older woman from Tobolsk came into church early, and she sat down and fell into a light sleep, and she had a vision and revealed blah, blah, blah. Now, people will give that credence above St. John Chrysostom or above St. Basil the Great. Well, who's St. Basil the Great? A pious older woman from Tobolsk ranks him. But I've seen this time and time again, and you see it sometimes in the lives of the saints. And okay, I mean, I'd go to the Holy Fathers and the Apostles. I don't believe some old woman from Tobolsk who fell asleep in church. I mean, this is what's gone on and on for so long. Even when Metaprostes, Simeon Metaprostes, compiled his new collection of the lives of saints, he said that he had to go through the lives of saints because so much superstition and fable had crept into them that it had to be expurgated. So we have a lot of these fantastic things like that. And somebody wanted to advance an idea that they had, something that was in their mind, then naturally they would choose somebody with some great authority and say, well, he prophesied this in a dream to me. That's what happened to St. Neil. It was a dream somebody had that St. Neil supposedly said all these things. Whether you agree with what was said or disagree with it, it's very suspicious that you have a posthumous prophecy.
One thing that is in this prophet, in the text of this prophecy, which probably would be interpreted rather differently by people who push it today than by people at the time that it was published. It says, "It will be impossible to distinguish men from women due to their shamelessness in dress and style of hair." Many people who push it, the first person I heard any of it from said that was a reference to drag queens.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
In the late 19th or early 20th century, though I imagine it may have had more to do with women wearing pants and having sometimes short hair.
Well, during the war, of course, that's how women had to dress because they worked in factories and things. But it's from my point of view, it's part of that continued persecution of women that seems to permeate religion in general, and I think that's a real problem. That what do you want to? I mean, look at me. I wear a black gown, and when we have a wedding, I always comment that I'm, as a clergyman serving, I'm the only person who gets to outdress the bride. Because I wear these white vestments that somebody bought for me that are all kind of fancy, and I get to wear a funny hat, that looks like a light bulb and have jewelry all over it, and so the crowds I put on their head are rather plain. I like to use the Stefana, the Greek Stefana, the ring of flowers, but it's. I remember hearing a sermon. I was at Jordanville with a student, as a matter of fact, together with our Archbishop of Canada, and one priest preaching, and what he came out with is, and Salome danced before hair shamelessly naked to the elbows. Because in his day, women wore long sleeves, and no woman would wear something that was strapless or cut off above the elbows. So to him, that was a horror. And well, okay, but these things are generally nonsense, because we can certainly tell men from women, and that's even if they're dressed differently. I mean, if I were I have traveled sometime in my cassock on, and believe me, I understand why women like to wear slacks or pants when they travel, or all the time, because it's a nuisance sitting on the airplane or sitting in an auditorium. They're trying to walk upstairs. So I'm all for women being able to wear pants when they want to. And it's where they come up with these ideas, but they have fantasies.
I think it was basically not until I think the push for women to be allowed to wear pants started sometime in the 19th century, and it wasn't until one of the major wars of the 20th century that it became like accepted.
Well, sure, especially when women were, they had to serve backup in the armed forces. They couldn't serve combat in the First and Second World War. But there were times when it was just more convenient. And it's people get horrified at almost anything that's new or that changes. And it was, I suppose, barbarians who introduced pants in the first place. And of course, the Romans thought that was shocking, that men were wearing pants because they rode horses. And it was easy to ride horses with pants on. And finally, the Roman army had to accept that. But it was, considered outrageous at the time. I mean, they were only barbarians dressed like that. So people are shocked at anything that's new.
Yes, and, I've been I've kind of come across that because I've recently had something that caused me to start researching the prophecy of Saint Nilus and Saint Neil. You say Saint Neil?
Well, in Greek, his name is Neil. It's N-E-I-L in Greek.
Yeah, I've been.
The same as it would be in English. I don't know why people think names aren't holy unless they're in Latin, but instead of English. But somehow they did. But Neil is N-E-I-L in Greek.
Yeah, but I've been studying about it, and that led me to researching the thing about the history of women wearing pants. And apparently, in ancient times, when pants were first introduced from the Scythians, women were at the time wearing pants just alongside men, and it was later that it became taboo for women to wear.
Well, we had somebody who'd been an altar boy for John Maximovich in China. And of course, Chinese women always wore pants. Huh. Unless they were entertaining in a nightclub or something. I mean, well, what they passed for nightclubs, but Chinese women always wore pants. I mean,
I actually didn't know that.
That was part of the dress there. So nobody ever complained if a Chinese woman came to church in pants. It was fine. But not a Russian woman. Because it was for the national dress. And I think it's still, I'll have to say that I'm a bit of a feminist. And starting in the 60s. Because I think one thing that started me, in the 50s, I applied for a job when I was a teenager. And they asked me, does your mother work or is she a housewife? But she works because she's a housewife. I mean, what is that? Does she work or is she a housewife? I mean, she cans all kinds of stuff in the garden. She has old-fashioned washers for washers and dryers. She hangs clothes out on the line. She works in the garden. She feeds it for trees and everything. I said, my mother works harder than my dad does, probably. I said, what kind of question is that? And then reading what I specialize in history in school. I like that. But reading that about when women were trying to get the vote, and honestly, some of the articles that you saw there, this is an abomination to God that women want to vote. And nothing could be more unnatural to the human race than for women to want to vote and have political office. And really, they were using that kind of terminology. And I thought, it's crackpot. It's like when I give a lecture sometimes at a woman's institute here in British Columbia, a few other places I have, because I introduced the icon of the three unmercenary physicians who are female. Almost never celebrated, but they were. I called them mothers of modern medicine because they were before any of the men. And I said, it only works in Canada or the Commonwealth. This is Victoria Regina of Great Britain and Ireland, and there are other realms and territories beyond the sea: Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji. Queen, Empress of India, defender, supreme head of the Church of England, but she couldn't vote because she was a woman. She could be the Empress of India, Queen of a dozen countries, and defender of the faith and supreme head of the Church of England, but she couldn't vote because she was a woman. And that floors you. You know that until the 1930s, in English-speaking countries, women were not considered legal persons until the 1930s. If you had a job and earned money and you were married, payment was sent to your husband. We complain about Islam, but we're not too far away from that ourselves. So that these kind of ideas, well, if women dress like men, I don't know, murder babies or something, and it's just absurd, some of these things. I've got a ponytail because if I could, I'd cut my hair, and I don't see why women shouldn't be able to cut their hair also. It's men shave. It's the Old Testament doesn't allow men to shave. You can't put a blade to your hair or your beard. So, of course, they would have had long hair. And Apostle Paul tells us it's a shame for a man. But the Old Testament law required it. Obviously, Christ had long hair because he actually kept the law. But so you hear all of these things, and you want to stop and think for a minute. What this is really all about, what's really going on. And, it's shocking, some of these things people will come out with. And it's anything that's new is demonic. I remember when Elvis Presley was the Antichrist. When Elvis Presley first started singing, which here we have radio evangelists in those days. We didn't have telly.
Didn't he start out as a gospel singer?
Well, if he sang gospel music, I suppose he overlooked it. But when he sang at first and he gyrated on stage, he was definitely the precursor of Antichrist. And as a matter of fact, I think we were the first people in our area. I worked for some farmer and I bought an electric record player. It was a real novelty because we just got electricity in our region. And I bought Elvis Presley, those 45 RPMs. I bought Elvis Presley records, not that I liked him particularly, but that the older generation hated him, so I bought them and played them. But, you heard these radio evangelists, Elvis Presley will lead our country to damnation, especially from the States. And he's corrupting the whole society, and all of our youth are going to be corrupted because of Elvis Presley. And some kids started having long hair like Elvis Presley. And, that was just horrible. And, at the end of the war, flat tops became popular. Boys would have their hair cut in flat tops. Well, you were obviously a hoodlum if you cut your hair at a flat top. Until Elvis Presley came along, the boys started wearing long hair. Then guys with flat tops were the good guys, and the guys with Elvis Presley hair were the bad guys. And so it goes like that in society all the time. When people try to find some religious underpinning for their opinions and ideas and ideologies. And in a way, modern atheism is more a product of fundamentalist Christianity than it is of science. Fundamentalist Christianity and literalist Christians make the faith untenable. Science doesn't, because science isn't concerned with faith and religion. But it's fundamentalist Christians, including the ones in the Orthodox Church, who undermine Christianity and make it completely untenable. So that you tell people, well, you have to choose between God and truth, but you can't have both.
Well, as an atheist, of course, I try, of course, to do everything, of course, to be different than fundamentalists. So I question everything.
Well, the idea that without religion nobody could be moral is also ridiculous, because morality is an evolutionary factor. We choose to run society, and morality is what's good for you and the most people. If you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If you look at fleas on me, I'll pick fleas off you. And you find out that when we shifted from hunter-gatherer society to agricultural society, that's when we developed the idea. If you look at the Roman Catholics have something they call the 7 deadly sins. And looking at the 7 deadly sins, if you look at the hunter-gatherer era, there were things that were necessary for survival. But in a settled agricultural village, there were things that would be devalued. And so they became sin. And, greed is one thing when you might have to go the next month without catching an animal or something, having anything to eat. So you get all you can. And but in a civilized, settled village, it's not good. So, the switch from things that were necessary for survival to things that were devalued really took place in that era of human evolution. And so morality developed more in these settled societies where you had to get along with everybody, and you had to have some standard for social behavior, because it would otherwise the society couldn't hold together, it couldn't survive. And you began to develop moral sense. I think we developed a higher moral sense at the time of the first axial period, what we inherited from Zarathustra. And it strikes me that the prophets in Israel, minor prophets and the major prophets, were Isaiah and the others, they developed in the time of the axial period. And when you were more socially conscious, and you started to concern yourself with the poor and the work, and you look at the prophets and what they're saying, that the greatest sin against God is that we trample the poor under feet, to sell the poor for a pair of sandals, and condemning. So it was a betrayal of God if you didn't have some social justice. And the social justice developed in the prophetic era in Israel. But it developed after the great action period had begun. And Zoroaster was responsible for quite a lot of it. And so you saw that moral development taking place as an evolutionary process in human history. And it's like saying that we have morality laws. We don't. We have laws for the protection of our society and our way of life. But whether they're moral or not depends on whether they're perceived from the heart, motivated by love, whether they impinge on anybody else or not. All these other considerations. You don't have laws to enforce morality. You have laws to enforce social norms in your own given society. And they're not the same in every society. In Japan, the highest moral action was to commit suicide. And in Korea, the tradition is always that you If you fail at something major, you committed suicide. So committing suicide was a high moral value in those societies. Now, we don't think that way at all. So we have to really be careful. If we're going to have faith, practice our faith. And if you're going to have faith in Jesus Christ, pay attention to what Christ commanded and try to do it. But if you're going to try to impose your religion on other people, if we have a movement in the city across the river from us that the monasteries always supported and participated in. It's called the 5 and 2 ministry. And they're about feeding street people, providing water for them because people don't realize how hard it is for street people to actually get a drink of water. And who is supporting them along with us? The Fraser Valley Association of Agnostics and Atheists. So they were there because they felt the same moral consciousness that we felt. So our religion didn't place us morally one bit above them. So that's something we have to realize. Even when it comes to human sexuality, it's so clouded in superstitions and ideas that perhaps made sense in the Iron Age because we didn't have any way of knowing things. We had this reality tunnel that limited our knowledge. But sexual relations developed with eukaryote, single-celled organisms that suddenly collided with each other and exchanged genetic material. And that's how sexual relations developed. I mean, bacteria practice it all the time. And they don't have passions, but they exchange genetic information. The species becomes stronger and survives better. So, until eukaryote organisms were somehow, whether they tried to eat mitochondria, whether mitochondria tried to invade them. In any case, when mitochondria became present in cells, they could generate their own energy. They didn't need to face the sun with that sunspot. And so we could have complex organisms because cells didn't have to all face the sun. So we could have internal cells. So we began to develop complex organisms. And the ones that were on the surface had sunspot to receive sun energy, gradually evolved into eyes as we see them. And that's just the reality of it.
So, any closing remarks that you'd like to make?
I would say, your faith is one thing, but outside of your faith, the facts and only the facts. Try to examine whatever you're told, and try to see the basics of it, and try to see what came from late Iron Age knowledge as it existed at that time, and see what's developed on top of that scientifically now, and weigh everything by that. That's all. But for heaven's sakes, you don't have to choose between God and truth. You do have to choose truth in order to choose God. But what's true can never be a heresy, and what's not true can never be sound doctrine. And the only way to distinguish between that is by the scientific method. That's my conclusion.
Thank you very much for being on this show.
Thank you.
Anyway, this was my interview with Archbishop Lazar Puhalo on Friday of last week, May 22nd, 2020. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please leave a thumbs up and comment in the comment area below. Share this video with your friends and make sure that you're subscribed to this channel and hit the bell icon to increase the chances that you will be notified in the future when I upload new videos to this channel. And until next time, see ya!